Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson. In today's episode, we're going to look more at new tournament structures. Yeah, you may think I've already covered that a few times with various people, but you know what? We are far from done with this topic because Pokemon is apparently far from done with this topic as well. So with me today, above me here, I have my own brother, Jesper Eriksson. Welcome, Jesper.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on again. I mean, usually we do Epic Splash content together, but of course this is more of a serious matter this time.
Fair point, and although Epic Splash is the most epic format out there, people should know this by now. This can also be a pretty good thing to discuss, so I'm looking forward to our little discussion here and see what we come up with. So, are you
Yeah,
ready?
definitely too. Yes, sir.
Awesome. So, to take everybody step by step through today's topic, because there are a few things I would like to cover before we move on to the suggestions. So, on this nice, white, boring slide I have next to me, we're going to talk about tournament structures for larger events or large events. And we have a to-do list. I put up a little to-do list for us so we have an idea of what we're going to go through. And we're going to see if Jesper and I can at least somewhat stay along this list. Let's try that, Jesper, okay?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but let's try it.
Yeah, so a sip of coffee and cheers, everyone. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the old system. By that, I mean what do we had prior to this season. Then we're going to talk about the new system that was introduced at the beginning of the season. And then the new update that is very recent. For as far as I know, the first event that will have this update will be the upcoming Sacramento Regional, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
This video will probably be published after that, so when you see this video here, you've probably already seen what the effect will be at Sacramento. So let's hope that we are not too far off here. And then finally, we move on to the suggestions. So first things first. Let's get a good overview about what are the differences, what was the old system actually. So let's go for a new slide. And indeed, Slowpoke's also here. Hello, Slowpoke. And yeah, how would you solve it? Let's be fair. We cannot solve this in 1 hour. I wish me and Jesper could do it, and maybe we can come with some good suggestions. That's at least what I hope. But are you up for it, Jesper?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, one hour is not going to be enough to solve this at all. I think if we had got a couple hours, we could probably solve all the issues, but then again, that's not our job.
We should maybe make the Department of Tournament Efficiency. Ha 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 ha.
Oh, wow.
I had to. Sorry, apologize. And I should also mention a very important note out there. The opinions that we reflect here are our opinions and not the Pokemon's opinion or any other entity. It is just my opinion and Jesper's opinion. And well, if you want to discuss our opinions or have your suggestions your own, or have any suggestions of your own, you can use the comment section below. We're very happy to see what you think about this. So, what about the old system versus the new system? I've listed a couple of key differences here. And just to mention the key difference, because I'm going to be changing the slide over to some good old PDF files and stuff I found, where we can show what the format was for the larger events. So one of the key differences was that, or now is, that the new system is actually what is known as natural Swiss +1. So you play the natural number of Swiss round that will be indicated, plus an additional round. We didn't have the introduction of asymmetrical top cut. It has been there before, but it's been really formalized and really implemented now at every large event. We have a new change in the point cutoff. I'd like to note this is referring to the point cutoff changed at the start of the season, because as we're going to talk about in a moment, it also changed again. Basically back again, sort of. And then what do I mean by continue the same event? One of the big differences between the old and the new system is, in the old system, when you would move on to the second day of Swiss, it would practically be a new event in the sense that, yes, your points will carry over, but your tiebreaker would not, and you could meet the same opponent again. And that means that in a tournament, you could effectively meet the same opponent up to 3 times. Day 1, day 2, and in top cut. Now, instead, when you have the new system, we have, instead of continuation of the same tournament, not to mistake that it was like that before, sure, but here it's literally the same event in the sense that you would see that people who do not reach this cutoff of a given amount of points will be dropped from the event essentially, and you can continue with the same tiebreakers as well. They also carry over along with your points, of course. And that essentially means that you can only meet a person maximum 2 times. One on day 1 or 2, and of course in Top Cut. So to give a quick overview for everybody so that they can follow, let me just move down my PowerPoint here. I have a nice PDF overview for those here. I'm sorry for the page break. I had to find one of the older PDFs to give you an idea what's going on here. But you can see indeed the old cutoff stipulated that if we were 227 players or more, we would go into 9 rounds on the first day, and on the second day you would play an additional 5 or 6 rounds of Swiss before moving into Top Cut, giving a total round leg of 17 or 18. This of course now changed with the introduction of the new system, which started this season, but gives you something like this here instead. So what you see on my picture next to me here is how it would look that it was introduced this year. And big differences were along, aside from what I already said, was indeed that we have day two Swiss all the way down to 65 players. So it kicks in much sooner, but we also have, as you can see, a much lower number of rounds. In a previous video, I discussed with Azul many of these kind of things that affected this year, and me and Jesper are undoubtedly going to touch some of the same topics again. But one thing that definitely is a thing here, that on the first day, we're looking mostly at playing 8 rounds. Up until, of course, 2,048 players, or sorry, 2,049, then we kick in for 9 rounds, which means at most events, the vast majority, we're going to play less rounds day 1, and also less rounds day 2, because as you can see, it's much smaller now. But now, Jesper, sorry, I've been monologuing a bit here. It's my lecture job taking over. But
of course.
But maybe you could inform people now what happened a few days ago. Like, I'm going to open a web page with an announcement for Pokemon. Maybe you can explain this announcement.
Yes, so of course, when it started the season happen, and of course also going into the World Championships, we were informed that there's going to be a new system in place. We would keep the old day 1, day 2 systems and use that for Worlds, which, generally in the past hasn't been used as much due to the old day 1, day 2 system that we've had for invites.
Correct.
But speaking of that, we have gone over to a format where we would play 8 rounds of Swiss, of course, until 2,048 players.
Yes, sir.
And then everyone who is X and 2 would move on, which means that you could lose 2 games on day 1 and move on to the next day. But of course, that has changed because last year we were playing 9 rounds and it was 19 points to move on, which is 6 wins and a tie out of those 9.
I believe we call this X21.
Exactly. Well, we didn't have I think we did have a 10-round kicker in there somewhere, but that was like extremely high.
I think that 10-round kicker was only for 1 day events where you played only Swiss 1 day and then moved into Top Cut. But that's besides the point, sorry.
Besides the point, yeah, true. But we moved on to an X and 2 moves into day 2, which was received quite well by the players themselves, including me. Going into Worlds, because of course this would undoubtedly make the day 2 event smaller, because we've also had the issue of having too big of day 2 events sometimes where we had over 250 people in day 2, and that simply was just too much. Now of course we've gone over to play 1 less round, which means 6 and 2 usually makes the day 2 system, and then we'll play less rounds on day 2 as we did before. We'll play usually maximum of 4 instead of the normal 5 or 6 that we had last year.
Indeed. And now I think it's a very good time to actually point out something, because one thing we quickly saw with the old system was we were reaching a breaking point in the sense that the tournament became, I wouldn't say unstable, but you started having the situation that if you would move into the second day with a minimum point requirement, say 19 points, right, X21, 6-1 in reality, you would be able to win out, or say you could win out, or say go 5-0-1, and you would still miss cut. That happened, as far as I know, only once. Twice. But I'm sitting here with one of the people that this happened to. You went 5-0-1 at the regionals on day 2 after going 6-1 on the first day. I believe it was 6-1, yes, but not 5-0-4, right? 6-1.
No, 6-1. We are real gamers here.
Yeah, of course. And you were playing helmet deck. I know. Yeah, fine.
Yes.
But the point was, you then proceeded to have a really solid day 2 record. 5-0-1 is a really good record in day 2. Unfortunately, you made 9th place. And of course, that was due to, was it tiebreaker or a clean cut, by the way?
It was a tiebreaker, for sure.
Fair enough. So Asymmetric would have fixed that.
Yes.
But I think what this points towards is we were not even at the the tournament was large, of course, but we're getting even larger events now. So Pokemon was probably, and this is what we're assuming at least, they're trying to find a new system that could accommodate even more players and have a good way of determining a winner. That means that they try to have a system where you could avoid this problem perhaps, or at least better accommodate more players. More players means, well, more tougher logistics and much more risk of delays and all kinds of things. So they changed the event system now, as we all know. That's been reality for a while now. But as we already see now, the same problem persists. That is that you can go on with your minimum point requirement, which now is x2, which means with 8 rounds, that is 18 points last time I checked, if I'm not mistaken, right? 18 points, you move into the second day. You can win out, go 4-0, and you couldn't reach top cut. That already happened, if I'm not mistaken, and that's problematic.
Louisville.
Exactly, Louisville. And I think that was also right around when the last video about the topic I made with Azul went up, and unfortunate. So, but it points towards indeed that this is still a problem. And we also learned that it is apparently not the priority of Pokemon to fix this problem, given the new change we see here, because what they did was, okay, we simply lowered the point requirement to go to day 2, which means now you're gonna have players going into day 2 that is, with 100% certainty, is not going to be able to make top cut if they go in with the lowest point requirement. It is very, very unlikely. This is can only be likely if the tournament size becomes very, very small. That means for Masters, this is not realistic. Maybe for Junior Seniors, waits to be seen what actually is the effect there. But it's definitely something where Pokemon kind of said, okay, this is not a priority. We want people to play, which is also, of course, I can see that's the priority. They want people to play, sure. But we also want to have, on the other side, we want to have integrity. We want to have like a good tournament structure that makes everybody happy. It's both good from the player side, but also good from the staff side. So there's a lot of factors here. Which now brings us, Jesper, to the interesting topic for today. That is some suggestions we can discuss. And like we already said, by all means, this is not a complete solution to everything, but it's just some suggestions that people could hopefully take with them. So now, okay, before we go for suggestions, there's one more thing I should maybe point out to everyone, and that is if I go over to another little picture we got here for people. This is how the new tournament structure looks like for reference. So indeed, what you see here, indeed, that with the new point requirements, so people can indeed get an idea, okay, what is the new threshold? We see here that for, let's take something that's very realistic nowadays, somewhere between 1,025 and 2,048 players. That is what we see a lot of regionals fall at the moment. They would then have a point cutoff now at 16 points with the new system here. And of course, move into a Swiss Phase 2 that will have 4 additional rounds before an asymmetrical cut. Now, there's a little mistake in the document, I think. That's why I marked it in yellow. Somebody could maybe fill in the chat below if there's a mistake. But I think asymmetrical top 6 is not a thing. I think it should be asymmetrical top 4. But let's or top 8. Anyway, it should not be top 6. That doesn't really exist, I think. But for some people who can confirm that this is a mistake or not, or maybe there's a newer version out there. But okay, over to the suggestions. So, Jesper, we have some suggestions here, and we already discussed it a little bit to, kind of structure our talk a little and everything, and it's the, what is it you usually say about that, Jesper, that TV-kartofler også kartofler ni går på? How do you translate that to English?
TV-kartofler også kartofler ni går på. Yeah, so if you cook potatoes on TV, they're also cooked before they go bad.
Yeah, and that's why we also have like a pre-talk about how we structure things. But I thought I would like to have that saying in because I think it's a really fun saying, and you use it a lot, Jesper.
Oh, I use that a lot, yeah, and it goes truly for a lot of things. If I say it while I'm teaching class, the students might not get it, especially because, of course, my audience is a lot younger than yours.
That is true, but I still call them kids, though.
Yeah, I mean, sure. They're like everyone's younger than yourself, so you can call them whatever you want.
Oh, okay, I had that coming. Fair game. Although sometimes I do have kids at this point, adults that are older than me in class. But again, besides the point. Now, what we talked about first was that we should maybe differentiate between 2 types of large events, because we actually got 2-day events. That's what you see on screen right now. That is by that I refer to regionals and SP tournaments. But we also have internationals and worlds, which are also 3-day events. So
Yep.
I was thinking, and then talk with Jesper first about it, how we could actually maybe make some suggestions for 2-day events and make some suggestions for 3-day events. Because 2-day events are arguably going to be slightly smaller than our 3-day events, because ICs are probably the biggest events we can have. We had our first IC, which was for LAIC, and that was, from what I understood, still a record amount for LAIC, which was
Yes. True.
fantastic. But it's also safe to say that both EUIC and NAIC is going to be even bigger. That is what
Yeah, they're going to smash the numbers for sure.
We're going to smash some numbers, and we're going to reach above that 2048 marker, I'm pretty sure, because we already had that before, introducing the 9th rounds on the first day. But okay, before we get there, some suggestions. So, Jesper, I have them on screen now, and hopefully you can also see them as well yourself. So, would you maybe go over these suggestions for regional/SP? What is meant by this?
Of course, we're talking a lot about, the additional amount of rounds kind of offsets the variance of tournaments, right? We want the least amount of variance there as possible, and of course we want to have the true winner. An extra round on the second day could be something that we were looking towards trying to fix this, where we go back to 5 rounds, even though most of these tournaments would be a 6-round tournament in day 2 in the old system. But getting back that 5th round, of course we had to accommodate some time to that asymmetrical cut, which is also why that, of course, we're having an asymmetrical top 8, which we would then, instead of saying maximum 32 players, because there's not many scenarios where you would even have more than 17 players who are asymmetrical with the number 8. And then let's just say maximum 16, and then if you get 17th, in the unlikelihood that happens, then it's just probably for the grade of the good. And then of course we were also looking at being X and 2 being guaranteed into the asymmetrical top cut, but maximum 16 still. Of course this was trying to cater towards fixing what happened at Louisville regionals in the start of the season.
So to recap this here, I think this is also what we call like small effects. They're not like huge changes to the current system. These are just small tweaks and adjustments. But to kind of round it off is, yes, we have not yet had a situation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, where we had more than 16 players in an asymmetrical cut. Most of the time we have 9, 10, 11, maybe 12 players or so, but we've yet to see above 16. And the reason we want to say max 16 here was that if we add an extra round, the 5th round, say mostly for Masters here, because now we're talking about mostly about size of events between 1,000 and 2,000 players, as you can see from earlier. Then by putting up one extra round, we want to make sure we don't go even an extra round again by the asymmetrical cut. So you would still have enough time to finish the event on the second day, because you would have 5 rounds of Swiss, maybe one asymmetric round before 8, and then 8, 4, and then finals. So that'll make for 9 rounds total maximum on that day, which is also what you had before in the old system with 6 rounds plus top 8. So
exactly.
The only difference here, of course, that the asymmetric round that you introduce instead of an additional Swiss would take longer, but there's less downtime between them as well. And what I can also tell from a staff point of view is that if you begin with your top cut portion of your tournament, you would start your asymmetrical game, but you can also just start the other remaining top 8 games that are not affected by this asymmetrical game to save time, to make sure there's less risk of a hold up later. So you have much less downtime. And of course, the final part, as Jesper says, X2 would definitely fix that. Indeed, if you go X2 or better, you're guaranteed some kind of cut. Of course, max top 16.
Yep.
There is another benefit here with an extra round. So Jesper, suppose we are playing win and in. And that actually happened before, once in a long time.
It has to be like a League Cup or something, right?
No, or Leipzig or something like that. Was that a win and in? No, that was just a day 2 Swiss round, right?
That was a day 2 Swiss round. You sacked me.
Point is, I won that game fair and square.
True.
But okay. About that is, we have situations now where you would play a win and in for top 8, or asymmetric top 8 at least, right? Yes. And then if you would win, you're in top 8. If you tie, you're probably both in top 16 or whatever, maybe top 32, one of them. But the point was, if there was a loser in this game, one who would not win, they could most often actually drop all the way out of top 32, which means they get nothing, in the sense that they don't get any cash prize anymore. They will get some points and some packs perhaps, but it's arguably just not a desirable outcome. By introducing an extra round, you get a better differentiation of all the scores, which also means that you get much less risk of this actually happening. So that will also be a very good thing. So some of these suggestions, hopefully they could listen to all of them. That would be fantastic, of course. But at least some of this would actually fix some of the issues that you see right now. And this would, even with this, with the change that Pokemon made now, would be okay in the sense that yes, they lowered the amount of points, but then people also know now when they come in day 2, okay, I'm not reaching top cut. As long as that is clear, expectation management, it's okay. That's fine. We got more. So Jesper, I'm gonna shift the wonderful slide over to the IC part of it, because now about 3-day events. And
of course, and before we go into 3-day events, though, I do want to make a small point out here. The biggest ever asymmetrical cut we've ever had is 15 players. But if we were to implement the system, the biggest ever asymmetrical cut we would have been 18 because of Louisville having 10-2 players down to 18. Of course, with our little thing here, of course, the 17th and 18th seed would not be a part of this asymmetrical cut, but as said, it's for the greater good. Some guys just have to be let down. There's no perfect tournament system that caters towards everyone.
But yes, of course, you're forgetting one thing. You're forgetting one thing. They didn't have that extra round of Swiss, which also would have removed this issue.
That would have, yes. So if we're looking without the Swiss round,
then of course.
But if we're looking with the Swiss round, it would have removed it.
Exactly. So I think it's thanks for digging up the facts, because this is very interesting. Louisville has actually brought us a lot of interesting facts about this, and undoubtedly Sacramento have also brought us some things. When we watch this back, we will know the outcome of Sacramento. So let's see. Moving over to the bigger point of the system here, and I think the common factor here is that we were hoping to be able to utilize Sunday a bit better. Maybe could you actually start with that, Jesper? No, Sunday, because since you have you're a caster now. That's fantastic. Congratulations, by the way. Well done. What can you tell us about, like, what you're allowed to tell, of course. Let's state that clearly. But what could we do? Because I, for one, would wish we could play top 4 on Sundays also. Is that possible even?
I mean, by all technicalities, it is. It has been done before, but this was like, we're talking 11 years ago. I remember Worlds 2013 was top 4 played on Sunday morning because of the event extending into later hours of the night. But not in newer times we've seen this on a Sunday of an IC, but that is because that, as far as the outlook is that, of course, the Pokemon Company wants all finals of all games to be streamed on the same channel, which means that Pokemon Go goes first, then comes Pokemon TCG, and then comes Pokemon VGC to wrap up the day, which actually means that with all the finals that you have to host, of course, Pokemon Go may be having a finals bracket reset due to them running a double elimination system, then it could actually extend throughout the whole day with finals. So if we were to have top 4 played, would that top 4 be played on stream then? That is a big maybe. But of course, from the outside looking in, of course, it's also a way where you can have more viewers on the same channel.
Yeah, I think this is incredibly valuable information as well. But let's for fun, for this example, assume that indeed the top 4 could be played on Sunday, because it does free up 1.5 hours. It's a significant amount of time, I would say.
I mean, depending on how slow the players are after time is called, yes.
Sure. One thing us judges should also be very good at, of course, is to keep pace of play, or let them help the players to keep pace of play. Let's put it like that.
That's your department.
That's my department for now, but usually, at least for this season, I've been with the kids, actually, mostly this year. Let's see if I ever make my way back to Masters, but for now, we are with the kids, which is, it presents its own challenges. It's definitely fun, but different. Now,
of course,
what about this separate structure here? So, let me start with day 1. So the first day, now, we are looking at the new tournament system. So taking offset in the current system that we have right now. So the one where, with the including the new change and everything. We would suggest the following thing. Day 1 will remain unaffected, in the sense that you play 8 or 9 rounds depending on how many players you are. You already play enough on day 1. Let's not let's not squeeze that any further. That's playing 8 or 9 rounds. That's enough. Okay. What about going into the second day? Currently, you will play 4 rounds, except if you're above 4,097 players. But let's just, for fair game, assume that that's not happening right now. Like, we're mostly sitting, say, up to 4,000 players. We are yet to see a tournament outside Asia, let me put it like that, that is above this number. Yeah, gotta say that, because I think, well, how many was it? 6K over in China that was here lately? Really big.
Yeah, and the Champions Leagues are also massive,
Massive.
dude.
Like,
They're also over 4K.
We are talking Western in that sense. So outside Asia, let me put it like that.
Yeah.
So what we would basically suggest here, add the extra rounds of Swiss on the second day. So go up to 5-6 rounds, say just 6 rounds. So that actually comes to look like the old system, following the same arguments from earlier. It will give better differentiation. It will simply also get, like, if you go in with the normal point cutoff, like X2, you would definitely reach the asymmetrical top cut. And we would also keep the same idea about the asymmetrical cut again. So max 16, top 8. That means that those first 2 points here are very similar to the points we gave before, with the only difference being we want to add 2 additional rounds on the extra day instead of 1 additional round, giving even better differentiation between the players and less risk of losing and dropping all the way down, the bracket outside the fun part of prize money and whatnot. I think that's the main gist of it, right, Jesper?
Yeah, it basically is. And from also what the viewers can see right now is that the suggestions that we have towards ICs and worlds is exactly the same as we had for regionals, but just, minor buffers, right? Of course, with the extra round on day 2, where we first suggested one round for regionals, 2 for ICs, and tried to move the top 4 onto Sunday. Yeah. Which, I mean, in all sense of purposes, since we're removing the asymmetrical top 32, we should be fine with.
Indeed. And these are just, again, I would consider this like relatively small changes.
Oh, yeah.
Relatively small changes. And we definitely, I think, we will have the time for it, because we're not playing, with this suggestion here, we play 8 or 9 rounds on the first day. You would play 6 rounds on the second day, plus asymmetric 16. So that's the asymmetric round. And you'll play your top 8. That gives you actually 7 rounds. Okay. And then you go in and play top 4 and finals. You could even still, in this version, play top 4 on Saturday, if time permits, but you would definitely have enough time if you do it on Sunday.
I mean, it's definitely something that's possible, because we've seen regionals start at 8 or 8:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Versus back in the day where everyone started at 10. ICs are starting at 9:30, but that's due to, opening ceremonies, and that has to be respected, because the opening ceremony starts at 9, at least for LAIC that was.
Yeah.
And the play starts at 9:30.
Yeah.
But there's no cap on when to start the second day, which, I mean, I would say from a normal perspective, 8 a.m. is the earliest you can start a day of Pokemon. But if we were to start at 8 a.m., this would definitely be possible.
Yeah, 100%. Then you definitely have the buffer there. But even 8:30, like, it wouldn't, if we talk about that half an hour, that's not what makes it and breaks it, I believe, at that point.
No.
And we have, remember, so most of these suggestions are always considered from the player angle. But now I've been staff for quite a few years, and already. Oh, time flies. But okay.
You're old.
Pension is looming, I guess. But okay. Now, the thing about this is, what about from the staff side? Because there's also some efficiency to be gained here. And this is where I want to introduce so no discussion about tournament structures without me mentioning the following thing. How about pots? What about pots? Indeed. Let's talk about pots. So, how would that work here? Let me first make this clear. This is only considering for 3-day events, like very large events. So let me...
Just like in the past.
Yeah. So let me try and explain this. We've seen pots before. It is not unknown to Pokemon. We've seen it very often at NAIC back in the past, or when it was US Nationals even. But when would I like to pots be triggered? So looking back at... I'm going to open a PDF very briefly for people to see here, so you can see the PDF here. Talking about when I say pots now, I would trigger pots when you hit 2,049 players. That is, when you would normally trigger the 9th round of Swiss on the first day. That's there, I would say we should use pots instead. So using that as the benchmark here, think about that for a moment. I'm going to put back on the slides. Then you would say, okay, the moment you hit 2,049 players, you would split into 2 pots. Because that makes 2 pots of, say, let's just say you had 1,100 players in each now. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because we are 2,200 players. That means instead of playing 9 rounds on the first day, you effectively only play 8 rounds on the first day. So you save some time on the first day. But that's not really the big deal here now. What actually happens now? During the day also, you not only have a more effective gameplay day from the player's point of view because playing one less round, there's also less risk of overall delays for the entire event. That means that if somebody has delay on table 73 in the first pot, it's not gonna affect the second pot whatsoever. They can actually just continue play. It is by all means 2 separate events. And yes, you would randomize who goes in each pot after sign in and all that kind of stuff. That should be least of a concern. So you should not have the whole like, oh, my pot was worse than your pot, blah blah blah. It will still at the end of the day, it will still merge. The question is just when. So the suggestion I would go for here is to, when you move into the second day, you have 2 choices. You either merge at that point or you keep it split. I would argue still keep it split because that's easier. Because you could merge it, and in the past they would manually do it. I've been reassured or I even asked, like, hey, could you actually do it now? And that should technically be possible, much easier now. But let's just assume for a moment you don't want to go through that technicality still, and you keep the 2 days separate still. Then combine it with our suggestion from earlier, you would play 5 or 6 rounds on the second day, say, and then you would produce an asymmetric top 8 in each pot. So you actually have 2 asymmetric 8s. My suggestion would then be as following. Play your asymmetric 8, so you produce a top 8 from each, and then merge to a sub 16. Yes, this will require an extra round because you get an extra top cut round, but if you would play top 4 on Sunday, you would have the following. Say you would play 5 rounds extra on the second day to add an extra round, maybe 6, but let's just say 5. You play an asymmetric round, that's the 6th. You play your top 8, that's the 7th round. If you would then add 2 rounds of Swiss, we suggested you would be up in 8 rounds on the second day. That is by all means possible. Very possible time-wise. It's 8 rounds just like the first day. With the difference being that 3 of them are actually top cut rounds, but the downtime is way less there. And then you play top 4 and finals on the Sunday. This is a very simple way where pots could be implemented, and not only is it effective from the player side, I believe, but it also makes the tournament run smoother because there is just less downtime between the rounds. Like,
I mean, the less downtime, the better, because of course, what Pokemon also wanted to is that players don't get finished with a day too early. Too late. And here in this case, we don't mean that. But of course, too late. And in this situation here, we would kind of guarantee ourselves versus finishing too late, I would say as well. So it's also super important to look at this from, first of all, player side, but also staff side, but also, a side of effectiveness. I mean, of course, we are starting DOT here instead of the counterpart in the US. So our Department of Tournament Efficiency is definitely saying that potting is really, really good.
And it's, like I said already, it's not unheard of. It has been happening before. And I've even heard stories about tournament organizers, because it wasn't the old rules that you could actually just pot to save rounds and then have lesser top cuts in each pot, right? And merge. I've heard about tournaments, certain countries in the world, where you would pot all the way down to, 32 players in a pot. It was really small and loads of pots to run many separate tournaments. It was really cool. I always found that very fascinating. And of course, it's not feasible for us to pot so far that you can, if you look back at the system here from earlier, you cannot pot so far, you only get like 200 players in each pot. I'm only suggesting we start potting when you reach 2049 to avoid the 9th round on the first day and still make it efficient enough. We could then start field testing if you want to run 4 pots, but then of course you get more difficulties later, because should you then produce an asymmetric 4, then it becomes pretty iffy again. So asymmetric,
that's pretty iffy because of the X and O's from each and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Then we start creating more X and O's, which is not good.
No.
So definitely just keep it at 2 for the start being. Yeah. But of course, if we go into then 4,000, then we of course have to look towards potting to 4.
Yeah, but it's the whole point here we're trying to get across here is a more efficient tournament structure, but also the fact that indeed that it's also just a better experience for the players. There's less the chance of being downtime, a large downtime for everybody in the room. And I know that you have to manually merge if you would merge the day 2s, but here we're just saying only merge a top cut, because that can literally be done by hand if you want to go that far. It's it doesn't take any higher degree to be able to merge 2 pots in terms of a single elimination.
I think we're at the point where even my math skills would be able to do that.
Ooh, and that's
in hand.
That's a statement, ladies and gentlemen. Let's actually, I may wanna come back to that and test you on that, Jesper. Now I got it. Now I got you. Now I got you.
All right, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. But okay, these are just some suggestions. Anything else? I think you think we've forgotten? Yes, perhaps.
Not quite, but of course, as always, I do think that someone in the comments on YouTube, or if they're gonna make a Twitter post, is gonna tag either of us and be like, "Hey, we could have done this," and then of course we would take all suggestions, please, because of course this we're not the ones who control this. We really have to do state that, and of course with this being our own opinions, of course, but
Yep.
we're all just interested in having a better tournament experience for everyone and making sure that we keep a great sense of competitive integrity.
And that is exactly the point that we try to accomplish here. So maybe this is never going to happen in these suggestions, but I hope at least they will. Somebody will hear it, somebody will see it, and indeed join the discussion. If you want to also, come back with your, your 2 cents on the matter, feel free to use the comment section. Like, this is what we're here for. We want to also just generate some discussion, because maybe one of you out there have a really good suggestion, then put it forward so we can collect it indeed, and maybe hopefully generate a really good tournament structure for the Pokemon TCG. With that said, thank you so much for watching, everyone, and thank you, Jesper, for joining here today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I had a good time. What about you?
Oh yeah, I definitely did, and of course, I'm always up for discussing Pokemon in general, but also, something that has been getting my attention in the past. Of course, has been more, a organizing side of things. You could, of course, we're talking organizing here in terms of tournament structure, but of course, also everything in terms of staffing. So yeah, all of these topics to make the tournaments better on everyone, including ourselves, is always something that's very welcome.
Exactly. And with that, I would like to say once again, thank you very much. I hope everybody learned something here today in this class in Stefan's Classroom. I hope to see you back for another class in Stefan's Classroom. Have a great day. Bye bye, everyone.